Chapter 8:37. In an instant, the two of them were on high alert. At this moment, when they looked around, all they could see was darkness. There was no sun in the entire world, and there was even a gloomy color. There was no light at all. If it weren't for the fact that the two of them were deities and their eyesight was different from that of ordinary people, they would probably be blind even with their eyes open. As a deity, entering this place still made them feel an ominous aura surrounding them. It was constantly trying to contaminate their bodies and souls. Subconsciously, they felt suppressed. Shinichi, this is the Yellow Springs. Looking around, Bandong Yuanzi confirmed where they were and her expression darkened. From her expression, one could tell that this place was very dangerous. Even a deity like Bandong Yuanzi felt threatened. Her expression was solemn and even a little fearful. Yellow Springs? Pei Ziyun paused, then came to a realization. No wonder I can't feel the power of the curse. It is normal to pull souls into the Yellow Springs. Even a deity can be pulled into the Yellow Springs after death, much less a normal person. There is no need for the power of the curse. If Yamada Kazuhiko's disappeared soul fell into the Yellow Springs, he would have to face the deities or ghosts of this world. I can't be lured here just for a tour. Thinking about this, Pei Ziyun asked Bandong Yuanzi, "Where is this Yellow Springs?" Looking around, the aura did not seem to be from the outside world. Pei Ziyun only knew of the existence of the Yellow Springs, but he did not know much about it. Even so, he knew that the Yellow Springs was divided into different regions, and each region had a different level of danger. This is the deepest part of the Yellow Springs. Bandong Yuanzi's face was pale. The filth here is very strong. According to the legends, Izanagi was ordered to come back from the Yellow Springs Kingdom and had to perform a ritual in the Abeochi Plains. Hence, there were 11 gods. Shinichi, if you are tainted by the filth, it will be difficult for you to return to the real world. Even if you do not die, you will be trapped here for thousands of years and suffer the pain of being corroded by the filth. Pei Ziyun smiled and did not speak. Many people were afraid of the Yellow Springs and saw it as a place of filth. This was not wrong. However, to say that it was powerful was an exaggeration. If the gods ascended, then the Yellow Springs is just a place where the dead fall. There are not many powerful beings here. There was no need to say this. I can already sense the aura of my father's soul. It's right in front of me. As his son, I have to go. As for you, Yuanzi, you can stay behind. You don't have to follow me. Pei Ziyun continued walking forward. Very quickly, his figure disappeared into the darkness. Shinkuin, please wait for a moment. I'll go with you. Ban Higashi Genko caught up to him not long after. Since we've come here together, we're already part of the game. Only by working together can we bring that part of your father's soul back to the modern world. Please believe me. Even if it's for the sake of not being left behind, I won't drag you down here. Ban Higashi Yuanko's words were a declaration of her position. She didn't even need to think to know what was waiting for them. If there were gods involved, and Ban Higashi Yuanko didn't declare her position now, it would be awkward. Pei Ziyun laughed. I know, but it doesn't matter. At this moment, the surrounding darkness seemed to be slowly torn apart by specks of light. Dozens of meters in front of them, a small pavilion appeared. There was a person sitting in it. Looking from afar, who else could it be but Yamada Kazuhiko? It's the soul of a real person. Pei Ziyun immediately felt that this was not an impersonation. He laughed coldly and walked over. Be careful. A large amount of evil intent accompanied by a murderous aura rushed over. Thick black gas appeared and turned into many evil spirits. The evil spirits were many times the size of mortals. They were full of fangs and had a pair of bright red eyes. They let out a loud roar, a whoa! A wave of ripples spread out. Suppressing the power of the soul? What a joke! Unfortunately, when Pei Ziyun saw this, he waved his hand and a wooden sword appeared in his hand. With a wave of his hand, a blinding white light flashed, and the hundreds of evil spirits froze in place. Following which, their entire bodies were set ablaze, and quickly turned into nothingness. This level of power was much stronger than before. Even though she knew that Pei Ziyun was no longer the same as he was in the past, she was still surprised that he had become so strong after becoming a god. Even the evil spirits that had been tainted by the yellow springs could be wiped out in an instant. Once again, Ban Higashi Yuanko felt a tinge of regret. She had not invested enough in him. If she had followed him back then, not only would she have improved, she would no longer be a dispensable deity. She would also have a deeper relationship with this powerful man. However, it was too late to regret what had happened in the past. Fortunately, she still had a chance to make up for it. Thinking of this, Ban Higashi Yuanko's gaze became more resolute. A white light flashed in her hand, scaring away the evil spirits that tried to attack again. She then followed after Pei Ziyun. It's indeed Yamada-kun. He walked up to check and could feel that there was nothing wrong with Yamada Kazuhiko's soul. Furthermore, it has not been contaminated by the chi of impurities. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. In the depths of the Yellow Springs, even the local deities might not be able to survive for long. They had to leave as soon as possible. Pei Ziyun looked around. He could feel that in the darkness, there were countless evil spirits moving about. The air was filled with filthy chi. This place was indeed dangerous. These evil spirits had long been contaminated by the chi of impurities and had lost all rationality. They were like the walking dead of evil spirit. They would only tear apart anything that appeared in front of them that had spiritual energy. It didn't matter if it was the soul of an ordinary person or a deity. The reason why Yamada Kazuhiko was able to wait until they arrived safely was because the mastermind had given him some protection. This was to prevent Yamada Kazuhiko's soul from disappearing before he even arrived. Yamada, Ban Higashi, do you wish to leave this place? Climb up one level at a time. We have a lot of gifts for you. Just as they were about to leave, a voice came from afar. The tone was neither hurried nor slow. It only wants to trap us here. There must be a huge change on the surface. At that moment, a wave of understanding washed over him. Pei Ziyun was still calm, but Ban Higashi Yuanko's expression turned ugly. On the way back, we have to be careful. Although she knew that this was a trap set up by someone, to be able to have such freedom meant that what she was worried about had happened. The deities and spirits of the Yellow Springs were indeed involved. As the saying goes, a powerful dragon cannot suppress a snake in its own territory. This was because this was someone else's home ground. It was already a dangerous place, and there were enemies watching them from the shadows. The road ahead was bound to be dangerous. Yuanko, if we encounter a battle later, you only need to protect Yamada. Pei Ziyun was not angered. His expression was calm as he spoke to Ban Higashi Yuanko. After receiving an affirmative answer, he raised his head as if he was looking into the void. Since they have issued a challenge, wouldn't we be disappointing them if we don't accept it? Present world, what? Yamada-kun and Ban Higashi have become vegetables? Tokugawa Hisaoki, who had just returned, was about to report the news to the public when he heard about it. He was stunned. Turn back. After hanging up, Tokugawa Hisaoki immediately asked the driver to turn around and head back to the vicinity of the shrine. There were several cars parked there. When they saw him, a few people immediately stepped forward and bowed. Lord Tokugawa, what's going on? I just met Yamada-kun and Ban Higashi. They were fine before this. How did they suddenly become vegetables? Tokugawa Hisaoki frowned as he asked. One of them lowered his head. Lord Tokugawa, after you left, Yamada-kun and Ban Higashi left this place and went to a hospital owned by the Ban Higashi group. Yamada-kun's father, Yamada-kun, had an accident and received emergency treatment there. After that, Yamada-kun and Ban Higashi went to the scene of the accident and suddenly fainted. When I heard the news, I rushed to the shrine. However, I was not allowed to enter. However, with the help of his Shikigami, Koshida-kun managed to sneak in and check on them. He discovered that their bodily functions were no different from those of a vegetable. Could their souls have left their bodies? Tokugawa Hideyoki knew how powerful the two of them were. Subconsciously, he thought that something had happened to them and their souls had left their bodies. At this point, another person spoke up. Lord Tokugawa, their souls have indeed left their bodies. You are. Tokugawa Hideyoki looked at this person and remembered. You are from a family of onmyoges, right? Koshida-kun? Kinoshita-kun replied respectfully, Yes, my ancestor is a descendant of onmyoges. Not all descendants of yin-yang masters would always have an innate talent. Large and small yin-yang master clans would always have a legacy, but the smaller clans would slowly become ordinary clans over time. Some of these clans' descendants would awaken their innate talent and choose to serve the shogunate. Kinoshita-kun was one of them. Tokugawa Hideyoki took this person's words seriously. He asked, Are you the one who discovered Yamada-kun and Ban Higashi's condition? Are they in danger now? When I entered the shrine just now, I only saw Yako-san protecting them with a sword. Although I had the protection of my Shikigami, I couldn't get any closer. I could only faintly sense a change in the atmosphere inside the shrine. It just so happened that I received special training from the shogunate's new organization. One of the lessons was about the special reaction that only happens when one's soul is pulled into the depths of the Yellow Springs. Therefore, I deduced that Yamada-kun and Ban Higashi have gone to the Yellow Springs. The reason why he said that they were pulled there instead of going there on their own was because even gods would not be willing to go to the depths of the Yellow Springs on their own. The Yellow Springs was a very special place in Japan. Even gods would not be spared when they died. It would be fine if they went to the periphery or the center of the Yellow Springs, but once they entered the depths of the Yellow Springs, they would not be able to return in time. Even gods would be tainted, and they would not be far from falling to the godly side. Therefore, the shrine's defenses were suddenly weakened. This was also why Kinoshita-kun, who was quite talented, was able to sneak in with the help of his Shikigami. But it was only for a short while, because he was quickly discovered by Yako-san and scared away by her, not daring to enter again. Kinoshita-kun could not help but smile bitterly at this thought. He had thought that he was a genius who had such power despite his ordinary birth. Who would have thought that a girl of ordinary birth could scare him away with just a glance? But when he thought of the two people lying on the mattress in the shrine, Kinoshita-kun could not help but feel complicated. They were pulled into the depths of the Yellow Springs? Tokugawa Hisaki's expression kept changing as he thought of the legends he had heard about the Yellow Springs. After a while, he asked, Can they be saved? Kinoshita-kun shook his head. Tokugawa Hideyoki did not ask if it was impossible, or if it was not worth the price to save them. If that's the case, someone is guarding this place. If there are any changes, report to me immediately. Tokugawa Hideyoki thought of his mission and was about to leave. The person who had spoken earlier could not help but bow and say, Tokugawa-sama, now that things have come to this, do you still want to continue the propaganda, as well as the shogunate and the emperor's conferment of Yamada Shinji? He was responsible for some of the propaganda. If he did not clarify things, who would be responsible for it? Tokugawa Hideyoki glanced at him, thought for a moment, and gritted his teeth. Continue. Chapter 838. Yellow Springs, Shinichi, the space here is chaotic. The direction might not be what my eyes see. I need to stop for a while before I can determine the direction. Due to an accident, Ban Higashi Genko had been to Yellow Springs before. Although she did not go deeper, as a deity, she had left signs for the way. This was to be prepared in case she ran into trouble in the future. She did not expect to use it today. However, in order to not be discovered by the local demons and deities, these signs were extremely weak. Only Ban Higashi Genko could sense them. Even so, she needed time. When they tried to go up, not only did they need to determine the direction, they also needed to be wary of the evil spirits and filth that might pounce on them. When Ban Higashi Genko focused on finding the way, she needed Pei Ziyun's protection. "Don't worry, I will definitely protect you," Pei Ziyun promised her. He pointed his wooden blade and countless figures rushed over. All of them had thin bodies. Some had broken arms and legs and were bleeding from all 7 orifices. It was a terrifying scene. Although the 2 of them were working together, Ban Higashi Genko felt safe seeing the man who had spoken so calmly. Suppressing her complicated feelings, Ban Higashi Genko closed her eyes. A faint golden light flowed out. At the same time, a few spots of light in the distance responded. In an instant, those spots of light dimmed, and the evil spirits could no longer find them. However, Ban Higashi Genko had memorized the location. This was something that even the chaotic space could not hide. "Go that way." When Ban Higashi Genko opened her eyes again, she realized that her surroundings were filled with ghostly flames. Under the dim green light, countless evil spirits' corpses were burning and turning into ashes. Pei Ziyun, who had sheathed his blade, looked at where Ban Higashi Genko was pointing and nodded. He led the way, while Ban Higashi Genko protected the part of Yamada Kazuhiko's soul and followed closely. Both of them were shrouded in divine light. The weaker evil spirits could not even get close to them, while the stronger ones were quickly killed by Pei Ziyun. However, there seemed to be no end to the road ahead. On the dark road, evil spirits could appear at any time. As time passed, Ban Higashi Genko felt that the evil spirits they met were getting stronger. If at the beginning, Ban Higashi Genko could easily kill the evil spirits, now that she started to meet evil spirits, she had to expend more energy. This situation was not normal. The closer one got to the depths of the Yellow Springs, the more filth there was, and the wraiths that could exist in that area were supposed to be stronger wraiths. Although the malevolent spirits they had encountered before were not weak, and most gods would have to avoid them when they attacked in groups, the higher they went, the more powerful the enemies they encountered. It was obvious that this was man-made. The mastermind was treating them like a cat playing with a mouse. Sakato Genko could almost feel a pair of eyes filled with malice staring at them, watching them slowly fall into despair and struggle. Could it be that the demons are colluding with the ghosts and spirits of Huangquan? If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have allowed those monsters to set up such a trap in the Yellow Springs, setting up layers upon layers of ambushes just to make me and Lord Xin feel despair. The most important thing here is the godly power. These wraiths are just wasting our godly power. Once we run out of godly power, we'll be defeated. As Ban Higashi Genko thought of this, her heart sank. If that was really the case, the further they went, the more dangerous it would be. It would be very difficult to get out successfully. But as she thought of this, her gaze fell on Yamada Shinichi's side profile. Looking at his calm and expressionless face, her restless heart slowly calmed down. "You need to rest." Just then, Pei Ziyun stopped and looked at Ban Higashi Genko, who had also stopped. "Your divine light has dimmed. You're beginning to be affected by the filth. To be able to make a god feel all sorts of negative emotions, this in itself was a sign of being polluted." Ban Higashi Genko also realized this. Just as she was about to nod, she suddenly looked around. Just then, there was a scream in the darkness. In the darkness, countless more wraiths appeared. At the same time, filth spread out. "Rest first." As Pei Ziyun spoke, he pointed with his wooden blade. With a flash of white light, he drew a circle on the ground. Wherever the circle went, a faint white light rushed out. Roar! Some wraiths couldn't hold it in any longer and pounced forward. But as soon as they touched the circle, the white light shone brightly. The wraiths that got close didn't even have the chance to scream before they were burned into ashes in the air. This is an enchantment barrier? In the air, a monster with shark fins on its back tried to leap over the circle and fly in. In the end, as soon as it got close, it turned into ashes as well. The arc of the circle even covered the sky. Even without looking, it must be the same below. This was the power of the enchantment barrier. You rest first, Pei Zi-yun said as he channeled energy into the white light. Roar. More than 10 wraiths couldn't hold it in any longer and pounced forward. With a boom, more than 10 temporary flames were ignited in the air. Here, not only were there wraiths trying to break through the enchantment barrier, the filth that was slowly enveloping the area was also constantly eroding the enchantment barrier, trying to penetrate it. As for the enchantment barrier, it couldn't be stopped or else it would be depleted. If this goes on, the two of us will be exhausted sooner or later. When that happens, won't we be surrounded by the wraiths and filth? If we continue to stay like this, we'll just be sitting ducks. She didn't understand why Pei Zi-yun chose to stop here, but she was also tired. In order not to drag them down, Ban Higashi Genko immediately closed her eyes and seized the time to rest. After an unknown amount of time, she opened her eyes, stood up and started channeling energy into the enchantment barrier. Shin-kun, are you alright? Seeing Yamada Shinji's pale face, Ban Higashi Genko couldn't help but ask. Pei Zi-yun replied calmly, I'm fine. Seeing that Ban Higashi Genko wanted to say something, he said, Wait for a while more, I'll bring you out of here. I'll leave this place to you. Such confidence made Ban Higashi Genko puzzled. Outside the enchantment barrier, there were tens of thousands of wraiths gathered. Filth accompanied them, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. It looked like they had the upper hand and were just waiting for the enchantment barrier to break before they charged in. How could it be easy for them to get past these wraiths and filth and move forward? However, this wasn't the time to think about this. She tried her best to calm herself down, gritted her teeth and continued channeling energy into the enchantment barrier. Shin-kun, rest first. Leave this to me. General, are we still not going to attack? Behind the wraiths, a tall general with long horns stared at them and asked. The general only shook his head, let's wait. Even though they had delayed for a long time, the general still didn't dare to attack. Along the way, the ground was littered with ashes from the dead wraiths. No matter how strong Yamada Shinji was, he was even more feared after becoming a god. Thinking of this, he ordered, immediately shout and persuade them to surrender. This is the Yellow Springs, not the land of your gods. Quickly surrender and become the god of the Yellow Springs. The sane ghostly immortals behind started to shout at the barrier. They were basically saying, so what if you guys are immortals? This was the Yellow Springs. No matter how strong they were, how long could they last? It was better to surrender now and save their lives. What a joke. Do you think I'm a fool? Ban Higashi Genko didn't waver. Since Ban Higashi Genko was like this, Pei Zi-yun naturally wouldn't waver. In fact, what he said to Ban Higashi Genko just now wasn't an exaggeration. The reason why he looked exhausted was because in his space, a large amount of ashes had turned into gray energy. This gray energy then turned into white energy and entered the shrine. At this point, it was full and was being digested. Because it was being converted, and it was the power of the Yellow Springs, Pei Zi-yun's expression didn't look right. I didn't think that the power of the evil spirits in the Yellow Springs could be absorbed. Looking at the shrine, it was already lit up and the lights were bright. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Ban Higashi Genko was really exhausted. Her divine light was dim, and she looked as pitiful as a candle that was about to be extinguished. It's my turn, Pei Zi-yun said. Ban Higashi Genko heard this and heaved a sigh of relief. She knelt down in exhaustion. She closed her eyes and panted slightly. Realizing that something was wrong, she opened her eyes and saw that the power of the enchantment barrier was quickly dissipating. But Pei Zi-yun didn't move. Ban Higashi Genko didn't know what Yamada Shinji was going to do. She looked at the soul of Yamada Kazuhiko, who was standing there in a daze, and walked closer to protect it. Ban Higashi Genko didn't ask immediately because of her confidence in Pei Ziyun. But Pei Ziyun's next action also answered Ban Higashi Genko's doubt. Pei Ziyun stretched out his hand, and a golden bow appeared in his originally empty hand. The bow's sudden appearance stunned Ban Higashi Genko. The next moment, Pei Ziyun did something that shocked her even more. An arrow that was also golden in color was knocked on the bow. With a swoosh, the arrow was released from the bowstring. In the air, one arrow turned into two, two became four, four became 8 and quickly turned into thousands of arrows. The only difference was that the color of the arrows had turned white, and they emitted a white light. This white light didn't affect Ban Higashi Genko. Ban Higashi Genko watched as the arrow turned into thousands of arrows that flew in all directions. Puff, puff, puff. Every arrow hit an evil spirit. The evil spirit that was shot stopped in its tracks, let out a blood-curdling scream, and turned into a ball of fire. Ah! This was almost a one-sided massacre. The party that was being slaughtered didn't even have time to react when it was over. Even the great general behind him couldn't avoid the arrow and was hit by it. He grabbed the arrow with all his might, trying to pull it out, but the white flame was already burning inside him. When the great general's screams disappeared, the whole place was empty, and only ashes were left. Ban Higashi Genko took a deep breath and couldn't help but say, Shin Kuin is indeed powerful. Ban Higashi Genko took a deep breath and couldn't help but say. There were 6 figures standing alone there. The moment their gazes met, those 6 figures could not help but tremble. There are only a few demons left. It's a pity that they aren't worth much. Pei Ziyun laughed coldly. The enchantment barrier had already disappeared, and the moment the evil spirit was shot to death, the energy generated had also swept away the filth in the surroundings. Chapter 839. The blade flashed. The 5 demons were reduced to ashes. The demon general appeared from behind Pei Ziyun and clawed at him. Although he dodged the claw, Pei Ziyun smelled an indescribable stench. It was a mix of filth and filth. Missing his claw, he retreated a few steps and disappeared into the darkness once again. But Pei Ziyun knew that it was still here. This demon has an ominous aura. It's similar to the filth of the Yellow Springs. Could it be a demon born from filth? There were many demons in Japan. Many things could be turned into demons. There was indeed a demon that he did not want to get close to. Could it be the legendary filth? But filth is only a fictional demon. It's not strong, nor is it a ferocious demon. Although he did not understand, Pei Ziyun did not think too much about it. Even if he did not know its true identity, power was power. He could just use brute force to suppress it. The demon general had a heavy responsibility and did not dare to escape. It was waiting for an opportunity in the dark. Suddenly, it flashed and stuck out its tongue. With a piu sound, the tongue pierced towards Pei Ziyun. Good timing. Pei Ziyun was waiting for it to attack again. When the tongue, as fast as a frog, stabbed towards him, the blade flashed and the tongue was cut off. Both halves of the tongue were set ablaze. But the enemy seemed to have learned its lesson. With a pa sound, the tongue was cut off. Could it really be filth? Seeing the tongue and smelling the stench from the burning tongue, Ban Dong Yuanzi was shocked. There's actually such a demon? You've never seen it before? Pei Ziyun asked. Ban Dong Yuanzi said, I've only heard of it from humans. I didn't expect it to really exist. A demon that even the gods did not know if it existed? Pei Ziyun waved his blade behind him. With a scream, a severed limb fell to the ground. The moment it landed, it turned into filth and charged towards Pei Ziyun as if it was alive. Pei Ziyun waved his blade again. The blade energy collided with the filth and was instantly destroyed. It seems to be the product of the fusion of filth and demons. I wonder what its true form is. Pei Ziyun thought as he waved his blade in a certain direction. Pooh! This time, the monster that escaped directly paid the price of its limbs. It left behind a mutilated body and retreated backwards. Blood continuously flowed from its body, making it look especially terrifying and pitiful. Roar! Seeing the white flames burning on its wound, it let out an angry roar and its entire body started to contort and change. Under the watchful eyes of Pei Zi Yun and Ban Dong Yuanzi, it transformed into a two-headed monster. Dog god? Cat demon? The two demons that were supposed to hate each other had actually merged into one body. This kind of abnormality made even Ban Dong Zhenko frown. Under her watchful eyes, the head of the cat demon gradually disappeared, leaving behind a fully formed canine deity. Its face was ferocious, and its body was covered in black qi. It pounced towards Pei Zi Yun. Idiot! Pei Zi Yun's wooden blade transformed into a bow. He pulled it back and an arrow was knocked on the bowstring. With a piu sound, the arrow shot out. Ha ha! It was useless. The filth of the Yellow Springs cannot be completely cleansed by divine power. The arrogant dog deity was shot by the arrow in the next moment. The arrow pierced through his body. Impossible! Immediately, a look of horror appeared on its face. With a cry of pain, its body started to burn with white flames. This is the corrupted dog deity. Ban Dong Yuanzi said to Pei Zi Yun with a sigh of relief when she saw this. The dog deity was one of the stronger demons in Japan. If the cat demon's power was absorbed by it, then not only would it have the dog deity's power, it would also have the cat demon's illusions. Ban Dong Yuanzi's heart sank when she thought about how the mastermind was able to control this corrupted dog deity. Don't worry, Pei Zi Yun said. Ban Dong Yuanzi looked over and saw that Pei Zi Yun had stopped moving after saying this, as if he was deep in thought. In the space, the torii on the left and right of the shrine formed a dog and a cat. However, their eyes were lifeless. From their bodies, a bright white light slowly floated and shone on the shrine. I didn't expect this corrupted demon to be able to absorb it so effortlessly. In fact, it's even more beneficial. Perhaps the filth in the Yellow Springs was mixed with some of the god's power, and was absorbed by the dog deity. These guesses flashed by. In any case, Pei Zi Yun, who had benefited, opened his eyes and felt that his body was full of energy. I have the plum blossom and the space. It's impossible to tire me to death. In reality, Ban Dong Yuanzi could also receive some nourishment from time to time, but not much. As long as there was no intense battle, she could gradually recover. This was the special characteristic of a god. They continued walking forward, but it was very quiet. They didn't meet another evil spirit. Are you sure the direction is correct? Pei Zi Yun looked around and found that the area was very clean. There were only 3 souls. Even the filth was only in the vicinity. Due to the two's god's power, it didn't come close. It looked too peaceful, which made people suspicious. Ban Dong Yuanzi didn't use her eyes to find the way. She could see the signs she left behind. She said confidently, "Don't worry, we are definitely going in the right direction." But after looking around she couldn't help but hesitate, but there's something strange about this place. Pei Zi Yun only needed to make sure that they were going in the right direction. Since we are going in the right direction, let's continue forward. Seeing that Ban Dong Yuanzi was tired, he waved his hand and a bright ball of light appeared in his palm. He handed it to Ban Dong Yuanzi. This is? Feeling the pure god's power on the ball of light, Ban Dong Yuanzi was stunned. Then she realized that this was a gift from Yamada Shinichi. As a god, she could naturally receive gifts from other gods. As long as the power was not tainted and pure, it would be beneficial. Thank you. Ban Dong Yuanzi didn't hesitate and took it. She watched as the ball of light disappeared from her hand. At the same time, a layer of white light appeared on her body and melted into her body. The next moment, the dim divine light returned to normal. The fatigue on Ban Dong Yuanzi's face disappeared as well. After spending so much time in the Yellow Springs, meeting so many evil spirits, and even killing a corrupted dog deity, I didn't expect that Yamada-kun's god's power is still so abundant. I could already see that he was exhausted, but he recovered so quickly. This doesn't look like his body has recovered. It looks more like he has regained his power. And Yamada-kun didn't do anything else other than killing those evil spirits and monsters. Could it be that Yamada-kun can obtain power by killing demons and gods? Bandong Yuanzi was an extremely smart person. Not only was she a god, but she also had the experience of managing a large company in the modern world. Combining all these details together, it was easy for Bandong Yuanzi to figure out what was going on. At first, this kind of truth seemed like a fantasy story. It was unbelievable, but after eliminating all possibilities, the most impossible truth might actually be the truth. Thinking of this, Bandong Yuanzi suppressed the shock in her eyes and glanced at Kazuhiko Yamada's soul, who was being protected by her. Fortunately, although I lost some opportunities, I still managed to grasp the opportunity to befriend Yamada-kun. With this kind of ability, Yamada-kun is basically a perpetual motion machine. Those who tried to use the human wave tactic to drag Yamada-kun to death are probably going to be disappointed. As Bandong Yuanzi expected, the three monsters who were watching the depths of Yomi through the spell all had ugly expressions. The monsters that were further away didn't dare to get close because the three monsters were clearly on the verge of exploding. Shutendaji looked at the scene in the light mirror and frowned. I didn't expect Yamada Shinji to be so powerful. He just became a god recently, but he still has divine power after so long. He can even support other gods. This is unbelievable. Tamamonome sneered at Shutendaji's words. He mocked, "It's all because the three idiots in the other world are too stupid. Although there are other versions of us, not only did they fail to take down Yamada Shinji, they even gave up their lives. The most hateful thing is that a part of their essence was also taken. Although it's not much, 3 of them added together is still a considerable amount. No wonder Yamada Shinji can't die no matter what. What's the point of saying this now?" Shutendaji was annoyed. "Then tell me, what should we do now? Should we continue to send troops to surround and kill him?" "We can only continue." Tamamonome's eyes darkened as she said in a low voice, "Even Yomi can't stop him. When he comes out, he will hinder our plans. Furthermore, because the 3 of us from the same origin failed, we know that a part of our essence was taken by Yamada Shinji. Although we have some of them, they are very weak. If we can take this ability." Before he finished speaking, the 3 monsters looked at each other, their eyes filled with ambition. When monsters killed their own kind, they could devour part of the enemy's power. However, even if they devoured it, there were many restrictions. At the level of a greater demon, it was almost impossible to gain any more power. Now, Pei Ziyun was not even afraid of the filth. This was shocking. "We don't know how many restrictions Yamada Shinji's ability has. If we go up and fight him, if we can't kill him, we will be giving him food. He is now a god." The third voice that had been silent all this while spoke up. "Then what do you think we should do?" Shutendaji was furious. "Do we just let him come up like this? We spent so much effort to cooperate with the Yomi demon god, and gave him benefit. If we can't even stop him in the end, what face will we have left? We will only be laughed at. As greater demons, even if they were on the same side, they would still compete with each other. How could they be convinced? Especially since greater demons were easily tyrannical, and did not like to endure. They cared more about face. If they did not handle this matter well, they would lose face. Even if they won in the future, they would still lose face. This time, they had to keep Yamada Shinji in the Yellow Springs. Tamamonome was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "At this point, there is no need to think about how the Yomi demon god will deal with him. Let's just do it." Shutendaji's gaze locked onto Yamada Shinji in the mirror, still hesitating. However, at this moment, Yamada Shinji seemed to have sensed something and looked out of the mirror. What he saw made the three monsters jump in fright. Even though they knew that he wasn't really looking at them, their reactions still made the three monsters feel ashamed. What did this mean? It meant that they were indeed afraid of Yamada Shinji. We can't wait any longer. Shutendaji made up his mind and said with a gloomy face, although we have offended the Yomi demon god and will be in trouble in the future, this is the only thing we can do now. Chapter 840. Since he said so, the other two demons naturally supported him. They had already cooperated with the Yellow Springs demons before. Although the demons were the ones in control and had the home ground advantage, if they wanted to deal with Yamada Shinji, they had to borrow his strength and had to be cautious. But with the experience and strength of the three demons, they naturally had a backup plan. These backup plans were not their own, but treasures given to them by the entire plan. Among them, there were things left behind when the demons of Yellow Springs were unprepared. Once activated, the entire Yellow Springs would shake. Not only would it cause the demons of Yellow Springs to panic, but it would also cause Yamada Shinji, who was trying to escape, to get lost again. I've already contacted those guys. I'm afraid that the replacement of our world has already begun. We can coordinate with each other. If we can't delay Yamada Shinji and let him escape at the crucial moment, all our efforts will be wasted. By then, it will be too late for regret. After all, if they let it go, Yamada Shinji would return to the real world in less than half a day. What could they do in half a day? Even if they disturbed the entire Yellow Springs, they could not kill Yamada Shinji. At the very least, before the plan succeeded, the Yellow Springs had to turn into a cage and trap Yamada Shinji there. Move out! After saying this, Shutendaji directly crushed something in his hand. At the same time, a surge of demonic power spread underground. Tamamo no Mae used a spell to send a message, then crushed something and transferred her power into it. The rest of the demons did the same. The combined power of the three demons activated the Yellow Springs Array core. The entire array was activated, and the entire Yellow Springs shook violently. Ghostly cries shook the heavens and earth. Ah! What's going on? Why is the Yellow Springs shaking? Who dares to do such a thing? Damn it! Those untrustworthy demons! How dare they do such a thing? Those who knew, those who didn't, those who were rational, and those who weren't were all panicking as the Yellow Springs shook. Some of the filth took the opportunity to rush outside, instantly devouring many demons of Yellow Springs and turning them into demons. At this time, Pei Ziyun was leading Bandong Yuanzi and Yamada Kazuhiko's soul out of the depths of the Yellow Springs. Boom! At this moment, the ground beneath them shook violently. Sakato Genko hurriedly steadied herself and held on to Kazuhiko Yamada's soul, who almost fell to the ground. Pei Ziyun, on the other hand, was extremely steady. However, he had also stopped in his tracks. With this tremor, not only did the scorched ground beneath their feet crack open, flames gushing out. Flames shot out in all directions, burning their souls. Even the surrounding space visibly distorted. Bandong Yuanko suddenly exclaimed, "Not good! The mark is gone!" In the next moment, the divine light on his body shone brightly, and the boulder smashed away. Within the Yellow Springs, there were already some slight spatial distortions. Now, as the Yellow Springs trembled, all kinds of power intersected. Storms, flames, poisonous fog, and all kinds of saber rain and arrow rain descended. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Fortunately, Pei Ziyun and Bandong Yuanzi were both deities. As long as it wasn't the filth from the depths of the Yellow Springs, Bandong Yuanzi wouldn't be flustered by these disastrous attacks. As long as he consumed the godly spirit, not only would he be able to protect himself, but he would also be able to protect Kazuhiko Yamada. When Pei Ziyun heard Bandong Yuanzi's words, he frowned. The spatial distortions have caused me to lose my sense of direction? This must be the doing of those fellows. They don't want me to return to the modern world, so they did something? However, Do they think they can trap me like this? He laughed coldly to himself. What a small trick. Although he didn't say anything, it didn't mean he wasn't angry. Pei Ziyun, who was already burning with anger because of Kazuhiko Yamada, was now overflowing with killing intent. This sudden killing intent was like a cold winter wind, sharp as a knife. Even Bandong Yuanzi, who was his ally, couldn't withstand it and took 2 steps back, let alone the evil spirits. Trying to trap me in the Yellow Springs? At most, I'll kill all of you. Pei Ziyun gritted his teeth as he looked at the horde of evil spirits that appeared once again. Under his killing intent, they screamed and retreated, unwilling to leave. If I kill all these evil spirits in the Yellow Springs will be empty, and I'll be able to empty hell. The modern world rewinding time to half an hour ago, the palace was quiet. It wasn't that there were no people here, but rather, everyone who walked in had light footsteps, landing noiselessly. One look and you could tell that they were trained. Other than the necessary official orders, no one whispered or talked. Although there were people walking by, it was so quiet that there wasn't a soul in sight. The emperor's office, although the inside and outside of the palace was antique, with the unique markings and style of the royal family, seemed to be separated from time and space, and was separated from the skyscrapers outside by hundreds of years. However, the room where the emperor was in was brightly lit and modern, but under the cover of the curtains, the shadows were dim. The emperor was old, and his back was no longer straight, but he still paid attention to his appearance. As the ruler of this country, he was under the control of the shogunate and the Hall of Gods, so the power that the emperor had was pitifully small. But since he had this title, many things still had to go through his hands. Therefore, he was still considered busy. Just like now, he had just rested for a while when a servant's respectful and polite voice came from outside. Hearing the request, the emperor's expression didn't change, and he said calmly, "Come in." The servant, who often came to deliver documents, walked in with his head lowered after the maid lifted the bead curtain, stood in front of the emperor, and handed the document in his hand with both hands. "This is—" Opening the document, the emperor was slightly stunned after just a glance. Conferring a title to Yamada Shinichi? The emperor had an impression of this person, even if he was already a puppet, but he had previously handled some documents regarding Yamada Shinichi. Just by reading those documents, he knew that the shogunate attached great importance to this person. Lowering his eyelids, he was deep in thought. A moment later, the emperor picked up the pen and was about to sign his name. As long as he stamped it, it would be considered as an acknowledgement. But at this moment, a voice rang in his ears, "You can't sign it." This voice caused the emperor's hand to stop. Actually, this wasn't the first time this voice had appeared. It had appeared before, but at that time, the emperor thought it was an auditory hallucination and didn't pay much attention. Later, when he heard about the other world, the voice never appeared again. Who would have thought that after such a long time, he would once again hear this familiar voice at this time? The emperor's hesitation was only for a moment. Very quickly, he wrote his name, stamped it, and handed it back to the servant. Actually, the moment the name was signed, in a scene that ordinary people couldn't see, the document had already flashed with a golden light. At this time, even if he destroyed the document, it would be useless. The matter was already done. Because of this, the voice remained silent until the servant went to deliver the document, leaving only the emperor in the room. Then the voice asked, "Why? You are the emperor, but you would rather be a puppet of the shogunate. How sad." The emperor sat there. The room was empty. There was only him and the owner of the voice that couldn't be seen. The voice's question didn't make the emperor feel ashamed. The emperor raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "Aren't you also the Tokugawa shogunate's puppets? How do you know that we aren't the same? You know who we are." At the same time, there was another voice retorting, "We aren't puppets. There are still the Meiji, Taisho, and Showa emperors behind us." The emperor already knew all of this. But so what? The emperor waved his hand and looked outside. Outside the curtain, there were high-ranking officials in the distance. These were all people who had to work in the palace. So what if they were puppets? Didn't the opposite party still come to an end in the end? At least, he still looked like a puppet and could participate in government affairs. That was what he thought and said, but what about after that? He Cheng and Ling he admitted to giving up their divinity. All the high-ranking officials, Chinese, were deposed and only one was left. They weren't even puppets anymore. His meaning couldn't be any clearer. I have the imperial court and high-ranking officials. Those are the puppets. But in the end, you aren't even puppets anymore. This question really stabbed at a sore spot. The few voices fell silent at the same time. Yes, in their world, in the end, the emperor wasn't even a puppet. He was just a mascot. And indeed, he was just a mascot. High-ranking officials? What high-ranking officials? Their gazes fell on the emperor, whose hair had already turned white. No one knew whether their gaze was filled with hatred or envy. Then there's no other way. After a while, a voice sighed. The emperor's heart suddenly palpitated. His instincts told him that something terrible was about to happen. But before he could stand up, a shadow of the emperor with the same appearance suddenly appeared beside him and immediately pounced on him. Ah! This shadow was so strong that the emperor didn't even have the strength to fight back. With a slight struggle, he was successfully possessed. His face, which was distorted from the power of the two souls, returned to a cold expression. He grunted, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. After a while, the emperor stood up and wiped his face with a handkerchief. Sakura, other than you, no one can understand my heart. If he had a choice, he wouldn't be willing to do this. Although he could succeed, it was also consuming his soul. After all, the emperor was the descendant of the Amaterasu great god. He had divinity. Not to mention replacing him completely, just possessing him now might cause the Amaterasu great god to reject him. If not for the fact that they came from the same source, he would have turned to dust. Even so, there wasn't much time left. So, he had to act immediately. He opened his hands and looked outside. With a deep gaze, he said in a low voice, "Transform." With this, the 3 national treasures flew out. At this moment, in the Yellow Springs, due to the decision of the 3 demons, the entire Yellow Springs shook. The Yellow Springs and the real world also changed, resonating with each other. The whole of Japan shook along with it. On the bustling streets of Tokyo, countless people panicked at this moment. Ah! Is there an earthquake? What's going on? The tremors are so strong. Chapter 841. Due to the frequent earthquakes in Japan, the people of Japan were already used to earthquake. However, even the elderly had rarely experienced such a violent shaking. Their faces were pale, and the young people who were walking on the street were so scared that they gathered in the open space, not daring to approach the buildings. The whole of Tokyo, no, the whole of Japan was shaking. Countless phone calls came in, and the office of the shogunate was busy and nervous. Although the officials themselves were also frightened, under such circumstances, they still had to comfort the agencies first. They couldn't let the situation get more chaotic. The Earthquake Bureau was the focus of everyone's attention. However, this was only the truth that ordinary people and low-level officials thought. The officials of the shogunate had already found some inside information. After the shaking, they didn't think that it was an earthquake. Instead, they realized that it was likely that the people on the other side were making a move again. At the moment, many people were also busy in the branches of the Shinto Hall. It was located in a courtyard in Tokyo. From the outside, it looked like a rather ordinary and elegant mansion for rich people. However, upon entering, one would realize that the people living here were not ordinary people. In fact, they were not even a family. There were long corridors connecting them. The people living here were all retired onmyojis of the Shinto Hall. Of course, retired was just a joke. Although they were old, they still belonged to the Shinto hall. However, they usually didn't carry out tasks, and outsiders couldn't even see them easily. Only familiar people would become their guests. The cherry blossoms bloomed in a house located in the center. A gust of wind blew, and the petals fell, covering the grass on the ground with a thick layer. Under the cherry tree, more than a dozen men in their 50s were sitting together. At this time, they didn't speak. The air was filled with an oppressive atmosphere that was the complete opposite of the beautiful scenery. After a moment, one of the old men suddenly said, "How is it?" "It's a substitute," another man with black hair and white eyebrows said. "Why would a substitute have such a reaction? It seems that there must be a lot of substitutes." "This is the rejection of this world," someone said. The old man who spoke first closed his eyes again. There was a flash of golden light in his pupils. When he opened his eyes again, he said, "Look." Around the sky, the stars, the sun, and the moon all showed overlapping images. No, not overlapping images. It was the power of the stars, the sun, and the moon from another world. Not good. He counted with his fingers and frowned. This is not a substitution of people, but a substitution of historical memories. Quick, inform the shogunate immediately. At the same time, in a commercial building in Tokyo because he couldn't make it down in time, he hid in the washroom and suddenly felt dizzy. A colleague who was hiding with him immediately held him up and asked, "Sakamoto-kun, are you all right?" Ichiro Sakamoto's forehead was covered in sweat. After a while, he opened his eyes and asked, "Who is the current prime minister?" "It's an earthquake, so he should be the one leading it, right?" "Sakamoto-kun, what are you saying?" His colleague looked at him blankly. "Although there is a prime minister, Japan is led by the emperor and the shogunate's great general Shinkawa. If something happens, it will naturally be led by great General Shinkawa? General Xian Chuan? No, it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this." Ichiro Sakamoto was stunned before he covered his head with a pale face. "Hey, Sakamoto-kun, where are you going?" Under the exclamations of his colleagues, he ran straight out. His colleague shouted twice and found that the shaking building had stopped. He tried to take a few steps out and quickly followed. He didn't dare to take the elevator and ran down the stairs. In the end, he bumped into a middle-aged man who looked familiar. Before he could speak, the middle-aged man greeted him first. "Oh, right, Sakamoto-kun, which prime minister is it now?" the middle-aged man suddenly asked when the two of them passed by each other. Ichiro Sakamoto had already asked this question, and Kawami felt it was strange. What's going on today? First, there was a terrible earthquake, and then these two people suddenly asked such a strange question. It's like a secret signal. Kawami frowned. It's not the great General Shinkawa? Oh, I remembered wrongly. The other party didn't give a violent reaction like Ichiro Sakamoto. Instead, he smiled. This smile was a little strange, and it made Kawami's hair stand on end. He quickly said goodbye and continued to walk down. What he didn't see was that the middle-aged man standing there watching him go down the stairs had a complicated expression on his face. Is it me who has a problem, or is it the world? At the same time, in a government office in Osaka. After the earthquake, they found that there was no damage to the house. They thought that it was the same as before. A few ordinary government employees walked back while talking. Just as they walked to the door, they suddenly heard exclamations and curses behind them. He turned around in shock, only to see a group of fully armed soldiers surrounding the area. "What are you guys doing?" Someone gathered his courage and asked. The leading officer said coldly, "We are ordered to investigate. Everyone is not to move and wait in place." Countless muzzles were pointed at them, causing these government employees to look at each other and shut their mouth. Now, they also didn't know what was going on. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. Facing such a group of armed people, they naturally chose to remain silent. Not long after, the nearby government personnel were all gathered together. At this time, the officer spoke again. Now I ask you, now the Prime Minister's government rules Japan, stand to the left. Now the shogunate rules Japan, stand to the right. I'll give you 10 seconds, immediately. What the hell? The government employees looked at each other and felt that this kind of question was ridiculous. Did this kind of thing need to be asked in such a serious manner? But when the 10 seconds were over, looking at the group of people opposite them, almost everyone was stunned. What is going on? Hey, Haruka, why did you go over there? A man looked at his fiancée in surprise. She chose the side ruled by the shogunate, but the shogunate had already fallen. This was the history they had learned. Why would his fiancée make such a low-level mistake? Not only him, but Haruka also looked at him in surprise. Why did you go over there? Obviously, her psychological process was basically the same as his. There were people on both sides, and the number of people was about the same. They were all familiar with each other. This was really a mess. The more common a thing was, the more shocked and panicked they were when they found out that it was completely different from what they knew. Although being at the bottom of the government, they did not know the truth of the other world. During this period of time, they still came into contact with a lot of information that ordinary people did not have access to. At this moment, all kinds of speculations surged in their minds. They looked at their old acquaintances and even lovers with suspicion. Could it be that he or she had been swapped at some point in time without them noticing? Just as similar incidents were happening in various cities throughout Japan, the central hub of the shogunate was the residence of the great General Shinagawa. The great General Shinagawa stood in the courtyard. Because of the shaking, a big tree fell to the ground, and its branches covered half of the courtyard. But because of his orders, no one went to deal with the tree for the time being. This is a bad sign. The falling of the tree seemed to indicate something, and the great General Shinagawa's face was as dark as water. He stood in front of the tree and looked down. The servant did not know what he was thinking, but he knew that the Lord must be in an extremely bad mood. At this moment, a servant hurried in and said with his head lowered, "General, the Hall of Gods has sent a message. Speak." Hey, according to the Hall of Gods, this is the replacement of the opposite world. Because of the replacement, the two worlds collided violently. It is said that it is not the replacement of a person, but the replacement of historical memory. If it is replaced, the person is still the same person, but the memory will change, causing the whole person to become different and identify with the other world, not this world. This situation was considered very serious. After all, even if it was not the person being replaced, but as a person, memory was still very important. When a person's memory was completely replaced, even if the soul was still the same soul, the cognition and sense of belonging would also change. In terms of the consequences of this substitution, it was no different from the person who was directly substituted. What else? Does the Hall of Gods have a solution? The great General Shinagawa asked in a deep voice. Just as the servant gave a negative answer, another servant hurried in. Report. The Hall of Gods has sent the latest news. They said that if this wave of replacement is resisted and the order of this world is not tampered with, a part of the opposite world will be digested by our world. If they are weak and we are strong, then the opposite world will continue to be pulled into our world until it is digested. This was indeed good news. The great General Shinagawa did not think that the Hall of Gods would deceive him on this kind of matter. After all, this was no longer a matter of power, but a matter of the survival of their own world. How many people have been replaced? The great General Shinagawa continued to ask. General, it is not possible to calculate at the moment. The official who was asked had just finished a phone call and walked over. He only said a few of the more serious replacement incidents that had been reported. This depends on whose historical recognition is higher. If our world's recognition is higher, then even if some people are replaced, When our world devours and digests the other world, the memories of these replaced people should automatically recover. The great General Shinagawa did not speak again, but raised his head and looked into the distance. There was a cloud floating over there, and through the cloud, he seemed to see another history. Similar to this world was the Warring States period, and before, the exact same characters and events, but without the Shinagawa family. Therefore, that world was the world of Oda, Toyotomi, and Tokugawa, and finally became Meiji, Taisho, and Showa. In his lifetime, to be able to encounter such a bizarre thing, could this be considered another legendary event of him becoming a shogunate general? Just as he was silent, suddenly, an evil wind blew. Chapter 842. Although the great general of Exhilarating was not a young man, he could be considered to have outstanding martial skills. In that instant, he did not have the time to turn his head back. He lowered his head and dodged to the side. Of the two knives, one was aimed at his head, and the other was aimed at his back, but he just happened to dodge it. "What are you doing?" someone cried out in alarm. However, the danger did not end because of the two people's mistakes. On the contrary, a few more people pulled out the ceremonial knives at their waists and pounced on General Exhilarating. "Kill the traitor, show your loyalty to the emperor." These people, along with the two who attacked, were all retainers of the great general of Shinchuan. They were all members of the Imperial Guard, and it could be said that every single one of them had a clean background, and had followed the Shinkawa clan for generations. Now that they had suddenly rebelled and assassinated the great General Shinkawa, even the great General Shinkawa, who had long known that the large-scale replacement of the entire world would bring about all sorts of negative consequences, could not help but feel his heart sink. Even such a loyal person would immediately rebel after their memories were replaced. How terrifying was the replacement of memories! In no way. Lord General was kind to you, but you actually rebelled. When they found out that one of them was an important minister who had followed great General Shin Chuan for many years, the other colleagues were so furious that someone started cursing. Kill these traitors. These people also pulled out their ceremonial knives and rushed over. Although they were ceremonial knives, they had been sharpened and had seen blood. No matter which side it was, even if they were colleagues who used to hug each other's shoulders and drink together, in the face of loyalty, they would draw their swords without hesitation. This was naturally because they knew more about the truth. When he thought about how his longtime colleagues might have their memories replaced and become the citizens and protectors of another world, this was already an opposing standpoint. This was a matter of loyalty and the survival of a world. Once a rebellion broke out, it had to be suppressed. For a moment, the saber light flashed, and people screamed and fell. Fortunately, the number of attendants supported by the great General Shin Chuan was obviously greater than those whose memories had been replaced. Soon, these people who suddenly rebelled were beheaded on the ground. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, making people feel nauseous. Many people were injured and were helped to the side for treatment. But because they were well trained, even if their wounds hurt, no one made a sound. Great General Exhilarating's face was solemn. Since things had come to this, there was no other way. He immediately ordered, "Execute the highest level of martial law." If necessary, the cleanup plan would have to be carried out. Yes. Following the shogunate's orders, phone calls were made one after another, and the atmosphere became even more tense. However, this situation did not last long. As a government office in Tokyo was blown up by artillery fire, the stability and peace that was barely maintained collapsed in an instant. Outside the general's mansion, a car sped over. The moment the car stopped, a man came out from the driver's seat. Because he came out in a hurry, he staggered. "Who is it?" The guards of the general's mansion immediately aimed their guns. Just as the person was about to speak, someone suddenly ran over from afar and shouted, "Oh no, the legal department is rebelling! Quickly bring me to see the general!" The legal department rebelled? The Emperor of Japan was a virtual monarch, and the shogunate was actually in power. Many departments were set up to assist the shogunate, which could be regarded as a coexistence with the ministers. This was supposed to be the power controlled by the shogunate, but no one expected them to openly rebel at this time. Everyone present was a bit dazed, but they also knew that this matter was serious. They immediately went up to check and prepared to let them in. The man who got out of the car suddenly came to his senses at this time and hurriedly said, "I also have something to report to the general." Because both of them were familiar faces and often came to the general's mansion, they were checked for weapons and dangerous items, and were brought in. As soon as they entered and saw the general, both of them hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. The news brought by the driver was equally shocking. "General, all of Japan, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and all the police stations have lost contact. I suspect that they have all rebelled." At the police station, although the police force was not as strong as the army under the rule of the shogunate, it was also a force that could not be underestimated, especially since many of them were equipped with weapons. Even if they were not as strong as the army, they were more familiar with the situation in their own jurisdiction than the army. Once they rebelled, the general's face became more and more ugly. Just as he was about to speak, someone rushed in to report, General, Nagano Prefecture has rebelled. They have just declared independence." "Report, General. There is an armed conflict in Hyogo Prefecture. The government is requesting support." "Report, General. Chiba Prefecture has rebelled." "Report." News came one after another, and the people in the courtyard held their breath, not even daring to breathe. Their eyes all fell on the silent great General Shinkawa. Now it was obviously chaos, and the whole of Japan was divided. How could the great general save this situation? Could it be that the whole of Japan was really going to fall into chaos again and be divided like the Warring States period? "I will go to the palace to see the emperor." In just a moment the general made up his mind. At the same time, I announced the start of the Kanzaki plan. After all, this world was his own world. Even if the other party replaced him, it was impossible to replace many people. He still had the upper hand. As long as the shogunate did not fall into chaos, he would definitely win. Yes. The people around him immediately went to prepare. Listening to the sounds of fighting outside, looking into the distance, the eyes of this high-ranking general flashed, but it was a kind of determination. Now, the first thing is to determine whether there is a replacement for the emperor. If there is, immediately die of illness and help the new emperor ascend the throne. At this time, more than a dozen cars that looked ordinary, but in fact, even the car windows were advanced bulletproof, were speeding on the road, and their destination was the peak. These be stars. Looking through the rearview mirror, they had finally shaken off the people tailing them. Tokugawa Hideyoki, who was driving one of the cars, could not help but curse. After all, in order to let them arrive here safely, some of the people who were responsible for bringing up the rear must have been loyal by now. The attack from the other world was too sudden. Even if they had long realized that they would not give up and would definitely take action, this large-scale replacement of historical memories still caught Tokugawa Hideyoki by surprise. Thank goodness the general had a premonition and sent the decree to me early. Otherwise, I would have lost a lot of people trying to get the decree from the general. Many people are watching the general, hoping that the general is safe. With this thought in mind, the first few cars in the convoy were attacked. Boom! Gunshots rang out in an instant, and one of the cars was blown to smithereens. There was an ambush. Originally, everyone was already tense. At this moment, it was as if a basin of water was poured into a pot of boiling oil. Everyone followed suit and exploded. These be stars. Fight back immediately. Don't care who's behind them. They want us dead. If we don't have the conviction to kill them, we will be killed by them. They were probably afraid that some people would hesitate. After all, they already knew about the matter of memory replacement. Some people really felt that the people who had been replaced were also victims. They felt that they were now fighting amongst themselves. But the problem was that even if that was the case, if they did not fight back with all their might, would their former colleagues who had the memories and knowledge of the other world let them go? Impossible. Those people would only become more murderous. Such a reminder was indeed effective. The enemy opened fire in an attempt to stop them, and their counterattack became even more intense. In just a few minutes, the sound of gunfire from the ambush was suppressed. Now, charge! Tokugawa Hideyoki shouted into the walkie-talkie. With such a strong force, the interception of these people could only delay them for a while. When they finally reached the foot of the mountain and could see the shrine when they looked up, Tokugawa Hideyoki, who got out of the car, immediately understood what was going on. No wonder those people were defeated so easily. They are not the main force. The main force is going to charge into the shrine. However, it would take some time for him to reach the shrine from where he was standing. This made him anxious. Hurry up and follow me up the mountain. Miss Yako was the only one guarding the shrine. No matter how strong Yamada Shinji was, his soul had been dragged into the Yellow Springs and had not come out yet. It would be useless. If those people charged in and destroyed Yamada Shinji's physical body, it would be over. Although the shogunate had many plans, the addition of Yamada Shinji was naturally a heavy bargaining chip. He was the only person who could show his divinity in this world. When he saw these people, they naturally noticed the shogunate's people at the foot of the mountain. However, they had a mission to complete, so they ignored these latecomers and rushed in with their guns. There's only one woman inside. She's a samurai, and we have the most advanced firearms in our hands. Don't get close to her. Fire at her on sight. Understood. Before they came, they already had an understanding of the situation in the shrine. They knew that the girl guarding Yamada Shinji was skilled with the sword. If they fought hand-to-hand, they might not be able to win in a short time. However, they were not samurai, so there was no need to follow the rules. They could just open fire. No matter how fast the girl was, could she really dodge a barrage of bullets? She was not a monster like Yamada Shinji. Ready. The people in front raised their guns, and the shrine suddenly lit up with a white light. Yako, who was standing in the hall with a sword in hand, disappeared in a flash. The intruders only heard a few screams. When they looked again, there were already 7 or 8 people slowly falling to the ground, clutching their neck. It was only when their heads slid to the side that a look of disbelief appeared on their faces. It was obvious how fast the sword was. Open fire! Someone shouted. Countless bullets were fired at the elusive figure. However, the strange thing was that even though they had clearly aimed at the target, they never managed to hit the target. Occasionally, a bullet would be shot, accompanied by a flash of the saber, followed by a series of clanging sounds. There were also those bullets that were cut into two by the saber. Although this scene was not as shocking as Pei Ziyun's, it was enough to make them realize that this girl was not an ordinary samurai. Its spatial folds. Some of the more knowledgeable people screamed. The intruders, who had not paid much attention to this girl, suddenly felt a sense of despair. Chapter 843. They had the advantage in numbers, but there was only one enemy. Furthermore, it was a slender young girl. However, this young girl wielding a sword was invincible. Her speed was extremely fast inside the shrine. She was like a ghost. The people who thought they had the upper hand were now like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. She weaved between them and took a string of lives before they could react. They were killed one after another. There were already more than 20 corpses on the ground. However, they had suffered heavy casualties, but they could not even touch the young girl. This could not even be considered a crushing defeat. It was a one-sided massacre. This could not go on. With the commander dead, the deputy immediately became the new commander. He then gave the order to retreat. Retreat! Retreat immediately! However, as soon as the words left his mouth, the commander clutched his neck. His eyes were wide open as he collapsed. The rest of the people scrambled out of the shrine. Hold on a little longer. Reinforcements will be here soon. In addition to comforting the people, someone shouted with a ferocious expression, "Since she's a ghost of the shrine, blow up the shrine. Blast the shrine and its people into pieces." "But we don't have cannons. A helicopter belonging to us is coming. Immediately order the air-to-ground missiles to blow up the shrine and the people inside into pieces." "Tokugawa-sama, we'll cover you. Hurry up and enter the shrine to read the imperial edict." The people at the foot of the mountain had finally climbed up. A few people protected Tokugawa Hisashi as he continued to charge in. The rest of the people started fighting the people in front of them. There had been quite a number of people in front of them, but some of them had been killed by Yako when they charged in. There were less than 100 of them left. The sound of a helicopter could be heard in the distance. There were also the sounds of cars at the foot of the mountain. There were probably more people coming. The situation was not in Tokugawa Hisashi's favor. It was not that the shogunate was weak. It was just that the shogunate did not pay much attention to them. However, Tokugawa Hisashi and the others could not care less. They had to go in and read the imperial edict to Yamada Shinji and confer titles. This was what they had to do now. This was a very important part of the imperial court and the shogunate's grand plan. They could not care about anything else for now. Hearing the gunshots and screams behind him, Tokugawa Hisashi did not even look back. He gritted his teeth and continued running. Along the way, someone shot at him. Although he dodged, he was still hit by the shrapnel and groaned. It hadn't been easy for him to get here. He was enduring the pain and his eyes were bloodshot. However, he didn't dare to stop for even a moment. The emperor's edict was hidden in the clothes in front of his chest. It was also wrapped in a cloth, which could isolate the water and prevent it from being stained. It was precisely because of this that Tokugawa Hisaoki was not worried that it would affect the edict inside, even though his shoulder was cut by the shrapnel and the blood spread to the front of his shirt. "Hand over the edict." A few people seemed to have run out of bullets as they raised their swords and charged over. Although Tokugawa Hisaoki was an official of the shogunate, he was no weakling. He did not panic when he saw a few small fries that he had missed charging at him. Bang, bang, bang! These people fell to the ground in response. "It's right in front. Quick!" At this moment, another person rushed over. The person who followed the last person pushed him forward and continued to run while he himself stayed behind to intercept the other person. When Tokugawa Hisashi rushed into the main hall, before he could heave a sigh of relief, a wave of killing intent assaulted him. "It's me!" Tokugawa Hisaoki hurriedly shouted. Yako retracted her sword. She looked at the man whose face was pale from the shock of the sword's aura and remembered who he was. "It's you? Tokugawa-sama? What are you doing here?" Even if he was an acquaintance, he was an official of the shogunate and had been here before. Yako did not know about the substitution of historical memories, but among the people lying in the hall was Yamada Shinji, whom she cared about the most. Even if Tokugawa Hisaoki was here, Yako would not allow him to get close. "Miss Yako, I'm here to read out the Emperor's edict," Tokugawa Hisaoki immediately said. As he spoke, he glanced behind Yako, and that glance made his heart skip a beat. Tokugawa Hisaoki saw two people lying on the ground. One of them was Sakato Genko, and the other was the owner of the shrine, Yamada Shinji. Gunshots rang out from outside, but the two people lying on the ground did not respond. This meant that Yamada Shinji had not returned from the underworld yet. Could he really make it back in time? Tokugawa Hisaoki felt a tinge of despair, but now was not the time to give up. He did not delay any longer. He did not even ask Yako to kneel down. He took out the edict from his pocket and threw the cloth aside. He unfolded the edict and began to read out its content. Tokugawa Hideyoki could not guarantee that the edict would be of help to Yamada Shinji, who was in the underworld. He had risked his life to rush over at this time because he had no other choice. As a loyal member of the shogunate, he knew very well that the entire world was in a moment of life and death. The two worlds were competing against each other, and it was either one of them who would die or the other. Just a little more power might be able to turn the situation around. Tokugawa Hideyoki had already cast aside his own life and death. He only hoped that the edict would be of help to Yamada Shinji, just as the Shinto hall had said. The edict that was being read this time was to confer Yamada Shinji the title of Grand Fifth Minister. The title of Grand Fifth Minister of the Imperial Court was something that even the shogunate could not easily confer. It required the approval of both the emperor and the ministers, as well as various other parties, before the title could be conferred. Therefore, the title of Grand Fifth Minister was actually quite valuable. His social status and power would rise by more than one level. However, to Yamada Shinji, this was not important. The conferment of Grand Fifth Minister directly affected the fate of the imperial court. It meant that Yamada Shinji had been recognized by the imperial court and was now a high-ranking official. He could be linked to the fate of Fu Sang and could use the fate of the nation to strengthen himself. At the same time, he could also obtain the coordinates to reach the surface. When the edict was read out, Pei Ziyun, who was still killing the ghost soldiers in the underworld, had the most right to speak. As Tokugawa Hideyoki closed the edict, an invisible golden light descended from the underworld and appeared in front of Pei Ziyun. "This is?" Pei Ziyun's eyes widened slightly as he watched the golden light extend rapidly from his eyes. It meandered towards an unknown direction. At the same time, he could feel that the connection between his soul and this world had strengthened once again. So it's the conferment of Grand Fifth Minister. This was indeed helpful. At least, the power of the conferment could reach the underworld and guide him through the fog. It was even clearer than Ban Higashi Uenzi's mark. As long as he followed the golden light, he would be able to get out. What was he waiting for? Pei Ziyun laughed out loud and leaped up. He raised the sword in his hand high above his head and swung it downward. Boom! Millions of white lights descended at the same time. It was so dazzling that Ban Higashi Uenzi could not bear it and closed her eyes. Under the attack of the millions of white lights, the ghost soldiers did not even have a chance to retaliate. They were all turned into ashes without a sound. When Pei Ziyun landed on the ground, he found that Ban Higashi Uenzi had already fallen to her knees and lost consciousness. This was not a good place to stay any longer. It would not be good for her soul if she stayed for too long. Pei Ziyun hugged her and grabbed Yamada and Hiko's soul. In the next moment, the three of them disappeared from where they stood. At the same time, the golden light shrunk and disappeared. The area around the underworld was once again plunged into silence and darkness. In the real world, Pei Ziyun's fingers twitched slightly. But at this moment, the sound of a helicopter could be heard coming from above the shrine. Yako and Tokugawa Jyoshing were already standing at the entrance of the shrine. In front of them were the people that Yako had just killed. They had turned into a pool of blood and fresh corpses. Yako, who had been harassed by the enemy and had no choice but to face them, did not notice the change in Pei Ziyun. Ready. Fire. Almost at the same time, the helicopter's missile was aimed at the shrine. With the command, the missile was fired straight down. Actually, because the enemy's reinforcements had arrived, even though Yako had killed more than 10 of them, there were still more than 100 attacking. However, the people behind the attack could not wait any longer. When the missile was fired, it would definitely reap the lives of more than 100 of them. Yet the higher-ups did not care. Yako was covered in blood, but her fighting spirit was strong. Seeing the missile coming straight for her, Not only did she not sit and wait for her death, she even slashed at it with her sword. The missile was actually hit by the sword chi of her sword. However, it did not explode, but disappeared in midair. This made Tokuwa Gyoshin, who was tensed up, dumbfounded. He saw Yako slash down with her sword again. This time, the sword chi of the sword even carried a faint red color that ordinary people could see. It flashed past like a flame, and in the next moment, the helicopter that was still circling in the sky exploded into fireworks. Just the power of this slash made Tokuwa Gyoshin look at Yako in a different light. One had to know that in order to prevent the people on the ground from shooting at the helicopter had to be kept at a high altitude. Ordinary people would not be able to destroy the helicopter with a single slash of sword chi. Even if they were to use a machine gun to fire at the helicopter, it would be useless. But now Yako's casual slash had caused the helicopter to explode just like that. Could this still be considered the power of a human? Could it be that because Miss Yako followed Yamada Shinji, she had also entered the ranks of the Inhumans? All sorts of thoughts flashed through Tokuwa Gyoshin's mind. At that moment, Yako's third slash had been unleashed. The explosion of the helicopter not only shocked Tokuwa Gyoshin, but it also woke up the hundreds of people who were attacking the shrine. When they realized that the helicopter that they had pinned their hopes on had been destroyed by a single slash from the young girl, a sense of despair spread through them. To them, everything in that world was real. Regardless of whether they had been replaced by someone else or had their memories replaced today, they no longer felt a sense of belonging to that world. Thinking of their own world and their loved ones that they had to save, even if they knew that they would only end up as cannon fodder if they charged forward, the hundreds of people still shouted, "Everyone, it's time to show your loyalty," and charged forward. Yako's third slash was delivered to them. With the first two slashes, Yako could already feel a powerful force imbuing her body. With the third slash, she had a breakthrough on top of that foundation. With a flash of the sword, hundreds of people died at the same time. Tokuwa Gyoshin, who was witnessing this scene, even forgot to breathe. His eyes widened as he looked at the people who had fallen to the ground. All of them had received a fatal slash, and the position and depth of each slash were exactly the same. It was as if the slash had split into hundreds of slashes at the same time, and it was not the sword chi that had killed them. Chapter 844. I am back? In the main hall, on a soft couch, Sakato Genko felt her body ache. She slowly opened her eyes, and the next moment, she realized something and sat up. She didn't need to open her hands or look at her surroundings. As a god, she noticed the difference between body and soul as soon as she woke up. Because Yako had just killed the attackers, the surroundings were very quiet. Sakato Genko even smelled the thick stench of blood. Following the smell, she saw a figure at the entrance of the hall. Was it Yako? At least 100 people had died here. Sakato Genko immediately came to this conclusion. She knew very well that the attack and counterattack would not be directed at her. Thus, she immediately went to find Yamada Shinji, who might have been moved here at the same time. Shinji! But just as she saw his figure, Yamada Shinji's figure flashed, and he disappeared from the hall. Ban Higashi Uenko seemed to have realized something. The next moment, she also chased after him. She raised her head and looked at the sky. She saw a familiar young man looking up at the sky. He was already slowly flying up. Beside her were two people who were also looking up. Sakato Genko had no time to pay attention to them. She hurriedly asked, "Shinji, where are you going?" "Yamada Shinji is back. What should we do now? Even the Yellow Springs can't trap him. He's now a god, and he even obtained part of the Ghost Army's foundation. He's definitely stronger than before. How can Japan suppress him? Are we just going to let him ruin our plan?" Shutendaji's face darkened. He threw away the wine cup in his hand, and the dark red liquid flowed all over the ground. It's all the work of those useless people. They couldn't even stop the person reading the edict, and the title was granted. Tamamo no Mae also felt aggrieved at the way those people had handled things. They had really trapped Yamada Shinji. They thought that there would be no problems, but in the end they were dragged down by those people. She was a demon to begin with, and had a vicious nature. At this moment, Tamamo no Mae's bewitching face was filled with malice. If a human appeared in front of her now, they would probably be torn to pieces. But other than this vicious nature, there was also fear in Tamamo no Mae's eyes, which she was trying hard to suppress. After all, they had died in the hands of Yamada Shinichi in the other world. In that world, their strength was comparable to theirs, and they also had the advantage of time, place, and people. It could be said that they had the home advantage, but in the end, they were still killed by Yamada Shinichi. When Tamamo no Mae learned of the tragic death of the other version of herself, she was furious. She also seemed to be infected by the pain of the other version's tragic death, and her fear of Yamada Shinichi grew. Now that Yamada Shinji had returned from the Yellow Springs, were the three of them really going to stop such an expert? Although their world was important, was it really important enough for them to risk their lives for it? Shouldn't we think of a way out? Thinking of this, Tamamo no Mae said in a low voice. Shutendaji was taken aback, and did not immediately refute. Dyumaru snorted coldly. Tamamo no Mae, Shutendaji, are you afraid? He glanced at them and said, I have to remind you that this is a critical moment. If you betray us, you will inevitably be punished by that lord. At that time, don't say that I can't save you. There was a warning in his words. Tamamo no Mae immediately looked at him coldly, but before she could speak, Shutendaji said coldly, You better not say such things again. If you anger me, you won't be able to bear it either. Shutendaji is right, Tamamo no Mae said. Tamamo no Mae chimed in, The three of us are monsters, and we are monsters of this world. Do you really think that they will trust you? Even if they give you benefits, you will just be using them. Dyumaru sneered, So what? Now that things have come to this, do you think we have any other choice? From the moment they agreed to the other world's request, they did not have any other choice. As thieves of this world, if they could not achieve their goal of devouring this world and truly replacing it, they would definitely be rejected by the rules, and sooner or later, they would become wandering souls. If they really ended up in such a situation, how much better would it be than death? Although the two monsters did not speak, they did not respond. Dyumaru knew that they were afraid. Their fear of Yamada Shinji had already penetrated deep into their bones. They were probably useless now. If that's the case, don't blame me for taking action. With this thought, Dyumaru concealed his ferocity and quickly formed a seal with his hand behind his back. A suction force suddenly appeared above the three monsters. The spinning black hole not far above their heads gave off an ominous feeling. Dyumaru, you really did betray us. Shutendaji, who was the first to be sucked in, immediately understood and cursed. Although Tamamo no Mae was also trapped by the suction force, her situation was slightly better than Shutendaji's. In fact, she had long been suspicious of Dyumaru. Although her companion was one of the three monsters and could be considered to be on their side, recently, Dyumaru's attitude had clearly changed. In the other world, Tamamo no Mae was a monster who had mingled in the imperial harem. When it came to meticulous thinking, ordinary monsters could not compare to her. Because of this, the moment she was suddenly sucked in, she did not roar like Shutendaji. Instead, she chose to attack with her 9 tails. The 9 furry tails all had different uses, but at this moment, all of them had transformed into ropes that wrapped around Dyumaru. Dyumaru did not expect Tamamo no Mae to use this move when she was about to die. He had underestimated Tamamo no Mae's ruthlessness. Shutendaji was still using his strength to resist the suction force. He wanted to break free, but Tamamo no Mae did not care at all. In other words, Tamamo was keenly aware that they had been set up by Yumaru and could not break free easily. Rather than wasting her energy, she might as well let this bastard die with her. Ah! Let go. Yumaru saw that he was being pulled into the air by several tails. His claws and fangs clawed at Tamamo tails. To a 9-tailed fox, these 9 tails represented power. Every time she grew a tail, her power would increase by a level. Every time she lost a tail, her power would be greatly reduced. In fact, she would need hundreds of years of cultivation to regrow them. But Tamamo, who had already realized what kind of fate awaited her, refused to let go even if her tails were broken. All of this happened in a matter of seconds. In the next moment, the 3 monsters were dragged into the black hole, which then disappeared. The entire sky above Japan had already begun to faintly suffuse a faint red color. The red was very faint, like the setting sun in the sky. The people on the ground did not immediately notice that something was wrong. At this time, Pei Ziyun, who was slowly flying in the sky, heard Ban Higashi Genko's shout, but did not respond. His eyes were fixed on the sky, as if there was something that he had been dreaming of. Other than that, he did not care about anyone else on the ground. He didn't seem to be moving very quickly, but that was just an illusion. In reality, Pei Ziyun's speed wasn't slow at all. Just as Yazzie was starting to panic, he stared at the figure that had become a black dot in the sky. Suddenly, the figure seemed to have touched something in midair. The entire sky, as far as the eye could see, suddenly lit up. Ah! Look! What's that? Due to the earthquake and the riots, there were basically no pedestrians on the streets of Tokyo. Many of the people who had escaped were gathered in parks or other similar open-air places. When someone raised his head to see the strange phenomenon and shouted, the people who heard the shout also raised their heads to look. What they saw shocked them to the core. Snake. Big snake. What's that? Why is there such a phenomenon? Is that a projection or a new weapon of the army? Many young people looked on in shock. They did not know if this strange phenomenon was a sign that the world was about to end. Among the older people, someone suddenly recognized the huge snake in the sky. It was so huge that the whole of Japan could see it. The snake had many heads, and it hung down fiercely, as if it was looking at someone. Such a terrifying and fierce image, other than the legendary Yamata no Orochi, who else could it be? It's Yamata no Orochi. Someone recognized it, and his face was filled with fear. The terrifying evil god that appeared in stories had actually appeared in reality. It was easy to associate it with the end of the world. As someone opened his mouth and revealed the identity of the giant snake, more and more fear spread among the crowd. It was not only Tokyo. Osaka, Nagoya, Kyoto, the whole of Japan seemed to have been forced to watch a holographic movie, and the angle was extremely good, the kind that was detached from reality. After all, from a scientific point of view, no matter how big the snake was, it was impossible for the whole of Japan to see it at the same time. Moreover, the appearance and angle were basically the same. It was more like there was a force that directly affected people's perception. It was a perspective that blended reality and illusion. When Pei Ziyun felt that he had suddenly hit a barrier, he had already jumped away. The next moment, several huge snake heads, at the same time as the giant snake appeared, tried to bite him. Pei Ziyun nimbly avoided it, but found that he could not avoid it. As long as he retreated and moved, the giant snake that had all the snake heads firmly locked onto him would immediately find his flaw. And Pei Ziyun did not intend to avoid it. He came with the purpose of killing the other party. Only by completing this task could he achieve his goal and go home. Trinity in one. The hand that held the knife slightly tightened and Pei Ziyun spoke. As soon as the words came out, there was a faint sound of metal, with an echo that could be heard from afar. In the next moment, a figure appeared, turning from illusion to reality. The young face looked exactly like Pei Ziyun, except that he was wearing a low-key luxurious ancient robe. At this time, he stood behind Paisiun to the left, looking up at the giant snake in the sky. Almost at the same time, behind Paisiun to the right, another figure also turned from illusion to reality. The young face was the same as Paisiun, wearing a pure white robe. Although he had black hair and black eyes, he looked like an ancient Greek. As soon as the two of them appeared, the Yamata no Orochi in the sky immediately showed a look of panic. The aura of three gods. And the two of them were not weak at all, even giving it the feeling that they had been gods for a long time. How was this possible? Paisiun, who was at the front, did not even move. The two figures behind him leaped up and slashed at the sky at the same time. The sudden bright light was like a sudden explosion of the sun. Everyone who was looking up felt pain in their eyes, and could not help but close their eyes. Even Yatso and Ban Dong Yuanzi could not open their eyes to see clearly what had happened in that instant. The light went out in an instant. When Yako and the rest looked at the sky again, they found that the giant snake was still there. Just as they were surprised, the next moment, the giant snake that looked like Yamata no Orochi exploded into countless pieces with a loud bang. It was like a meteor shower, with meteors falling one after another. This scene was both spectacular and beautiful. When it was about 10 meters above the ground, all the pieces disappeared. And in the space, the pieces of the Yamata no Orochi fell one by one, while Paisiun was still floating in the air. The two figures, the true sovereign from the Desu world and the god of disappearance from the Greek world, smiled at Paisiun and nodded, then disappeared. They were part of the newly born god of God, a trinity. Mission: accept the title of Japan's new noble god, kill the attacking Yamata no Orochi, and find the way home. Completed. As Paisiun and the rest disappeared, a plum blossom appeared in front of him, and quickly enlarged, turning into an information interface with a faint sense of light. Seeing that the mission was completed, Paisiun lowered his eyes and looked down. Although they were very high up from the ground, whether it was Yatso, Ban Dong Yuanzi, or even Hayakawa Naomi, who was not by their side but was also looking at Paisiun, could clearly see the expression on Paisiun's face. His hair was gently blown by the wind, and his expression was calm. Between his brows there was a sense of relief, as if he had finally achieved his final goal. He just smiled, and this young man who had influenced their lives disappeared just like that. Chapter 845. 3 months. With the help of the shrine hall, the former small shrine had been expanded several times. A large piece of land near Mount Lian also belonged to the shrine. Under the sun, the magnificent shrine was different from the past. Due to the arrival of the great General Shinkawa, the shrine that had been crowded with tourists and believers was temporarily emptied. But even so, the newly built shrine was still full of people. That was the thought of all the people in Japan who had seen Yamata Shinji kill Orochi and save the world, only to find out the truth later. They kept pouring in, shrouding the entire shrine in a thick white mist. A deity like Sakato Genko would not even be able to get close to the shrine without the permission of the master of this place, much less spy on what was going on inside the shrine. The only local deities who were still alive could only turn themselves into mortals and walk in as if they were ordinary people. Great General Shinkawa, welcome. Among the 3 women, only Sakato Genko was suitable to welcome the great General Shinkawa. Yamata Shinichi had always been a loner. After Yamata Shinichi disappeared, she became more and more withdrawn. Other than Sakato Genko and Hayakawa Naomi, she stayed at the shrine and never spoke to anyone else. Hayakawa Naomi became more and more beautiful because of her mermaid bloodline. Even Sakato Genko, who was a deity, would sometimes be stunned when she looked at her. With her current appearance, if she were to walk on the streets, she would probably cause a commotion. Even if the great General Shinkawa brought his men to the shrine, she only stood behind Banta Genko with a veil covering her face. Even so, a few people couldn't help but look over, feeling that the woman's body and temperament were really stunning. Such a good-for-nothing performance made General Xin Chuan suddenly cough. "Please bring me in." He waved his hand to stop the people behind him, planning to enter the shrine himself. If it was anywhere else, such an action would definitely be reprimanded, but here, no one thought that anyone would be so stupid as to dare to carry out an assassination here. 3 months had passed, but Yamada Shinji's reputation had spread far and wide. Even people from other countries had heard of it and were trying to test Japan. The movement that day was really too big. Even though the phenomenon at that time seemed to be covered by a layer of fog, and the satellites of other countries did not capture the scene, there were foreigners in Japan, and on that day, foreigners naturally saw the scene in the sky with the Japanese. Even if the Japanese emperor and shogunate didn't want to talk about it, they couldn't stop others from thinking too much about it. The reason why this mountain had not become the focus of the whole world was naturally because there was a mysterious power here that prevented satellites from monitoring it. Even gods could not detect the situation here, let alone high-tech equipment. Although Yamada Shinji was not here, he left enough things for the 3 women. Even with the special nature of this shrine and the acknowledgement and protection of the 3 women, the 3 women's safety was absolutely guaranteed. Thinking of this, the Xin Chuan Great General gradually went deeper into the shrine and personally felt the elegance of the innermost part of the shrine. The special thing about this place was not just the brilliance of the buildings, but more so the deeper he went, the clearer the atmosphere became. Even with every breath he took, some of his fatigue would disappear. Hiding the surprise in his eyes, the Xin Chuan Great General smiled and walked all the way to the rebuilt main hall. In fact, the shrine did not have a statue of a god, only a sustenance, and the sustenance was a wooden sword. The Xin Chuan Great General stood there for a while and read the imperial edict. Ever since the other world's Yamada no Orochi was killed, many people suddenly woke up from a dream and recovered their original memories. Japan, which was originally full of flames, immediately collapsed, and those who were still stubborn to the end were the die-hard elements sent by the enemy world, and they were ruthlessly suppressed. With modern transportation, it would take less than 3 days to travel all over Japan. Therefore, in just 3 weeks, most of the rebellions were suppressed. However, sporadic uprisings emerged one after another. This was the result of the other world's continuous integration into this world, but it could no longer change the general situation. It could be said that Yamada Shinji was the turning point and made the greatest contribution. Different from the imperial edict that Tokugawa Hideyoki read last time, the words used in this edict were more equal, and even a little humble. This feeling was actually very subtle, and people who were not sensitive might not be able to sense it at all. Only Sakato Genko's eyes flashed as she listened. This was the honor that the emperor and the shogunate had given to Yamada Shinji after the Shrine of Gods. Using an imperial edict to confer the title of a god was also true, but it also had the intention of appeasing him. This kind of display of goodwill was even more straightforward than before. Shinichi-kun, you have been personally read the imperial edict by the Xin Chuan Great General, and you have been conferred a title. This is the highest title that a god can receive. No matter where you go, you should be able to sense it, right? Will you be able to come back and meet us? Sakato Genko asked silently in her heart as she waited expectantly for the Xin Chuan Great General to finish reading the edict. What disappointed the 3 girls and the Xin Chuan Great General was that there was no response even after the edict was read. The Xin Chuan Great General was fine, as he did not expect to see Yamada Shinji this time. After all, he had already brought the shogunate's sincerity, and he had done it well. As the head of the shogunate, he personally came to read the edict. Anyone who saw him would feel that he was full of sincerity. Since Yamada Shinji did not appear, it was not appropriate for him to stay here for long. A world had been completely devoured by this world, and there were many things waiting to be taken care of. Coming here today was already a rare opportunity for him to go out. After bidding farewell to the three girls, Sakato Genko walked in front, and the two girls followed behind as they watched the shogunate's convoy leave in a grandiose manner. When they returned to the main hall, they looked at the statue and silently prayed. When they turned around and walked into the hall, Sakato Genko suddenly saw Yako, who was walking beside her, rush over like a gust of wind. Could it be? Sakato Genko raised her head in disbelief and looked in front of her. In a dimly lit corner, a young man walked out. Yako had already pounced on him. "Brother!" Naomi and Genko stared blankly at the young man. Seeing him hug Yako and smile at them, their noses twitched, and tears rolled down their cheeks. "You're finally back! Great Sue, Boluo Island last time, you said that you would accompany me, but you fell asleep again." In the courtyard, there was a room that had always been quiet. Even when the mistress of the house went over from time to time, there was not a single sound. Yi Su-er's eyes were filled with tenderness and love. Her fingers gently caressed the face of the sleeping god. The young man's face had always been like this. Even when he was in a deep sleep, he still retained his youthful look. It was not like her. Although time seemed to stop on her body, she was more human. Her face was younger, but there was more in her eyes. The only thing that did not change was the suppressed emotions that she revealed when she looked at the young man. If she did not suppress it, she would have been tortured by pain and disappointment every day. Every day she came, hoping to see him awake, to see him open his eyes and smile at her. But day after day, night after night, she experienced both anticipation and disappointment. "But I believe that you will not abandon me. You will definitely wake up." Slowly withdrawing her hand, she stared at him and said softly. The next moment she stopped moving, and a hand held her hand. Her gaze slowly moved downwards, landing on the face that had been closed for days and nights. At this moment, the young and handsome face had opened his eyes and was staring at her. "I will not sleep again." Ancient Greece. The sound of the waves came from afar, and the air was filled with the smell of the sea. The god who had been in a deep sleep, disappeared. The last time he woke up, he disappeared again. As his priestess, Cornelia was pitied by her god the last time. Hence, even though she had not been able to communicate with her god again after that, as though it was a miracle that her god had accidentally bestowed upon her in his long slumber, Cornelia was very attentive every time she prepared a sacrifice for her god. "Oh, Coria, do you know why everyone calls your god the god of disappearance?" A young girl could not help but ask Coria. It was time to choose their offerings again. The noble ladies came to the market again, but they were not satisfied with the goods available. Hence, when they returned, they paid more attention to other things. For example, whether the vanishing god had really disappeared or not. "I know. But I firmly believe that my god will not disappear. He appeared and responded to me last time." But Coria was unwilling to listen to her friends anymore. After saying goodbye to them, she lifted her skirt and walked quickly on the way back. In the sky, dark clouds were spreading, and the sea breeze was getting stronger. It was obvious that a storm was about to arrive. But when Coria returned, it happened to be raining outside. In the sound of the rain, there was thunder and lightning. She closed the door and walked in the large and empty hall. Where did they all go? She found that the others were gone, but Coria suspected that they had all gone somewhere else. Just as she was about to walk in, she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. The other party had purposely let her hear it. When Cornelia turned around to look, she understood this. Because the person who slowly walked out of the darkness was no one else but her god, whom she had the honor of meeting once before. "I knew that you would not disappear." Coria choked slightly, but she gave it a bright smile. It also smiled back. "Yes, I will not disappear, my priest." The final world October was the beginning of autumn, the season when red leaves were blooming. The morning breeze had a hint of coolness, but the streets were busy, and countless people were busy going to work. Boom! At this moment, a loud noise startled the flow of the river. Panic spread in waves, and the crowd waited anxiously, discussing, and it became chaotic. Soon, there was the sound of police cars. What happened? There was another accident. It was said that a limousine was passing by, and suddenly the billboard fell and smashed the car. What happened to the people inside? The car was flattened. How can the people survive? I heard that this was young Master Zhu's car. Young Master Zhu and his family were inside. The people outside sucked in a cold breath. This young Master Zhu was said to have a huge backing and was worth billions. Now they were all dead. Why are there so many accidents recently? I heard that this is the 7th one. On a bicycle, Pei Ziyun seemed to be watching the commotion. He saw that the car was smashed, and a young man was pinned under it. His head was exposed, and he was covered in blood. It seemed like he was not going to live, but his eyes were still looking outside, meeting Pei Ziyun's gaze. Goodbye. Pei Ziyun smiled and stopped watching the commotion. He turned into a small alley, and the commotion was immediately isolated. Even the air was filled with the unique smell of an old alley. Pei Ziyun looked around. He looked around, and everything looked familiar. On the time alley, the ground was uneven, and the walls were occasionally covered with moss. Someone rode a bicycle towards him, humming a pop song. It seemed that Pei Ziyun's temperament stood out, and this person could not help but look at Pei Ziyun's face. Even though he rode past, he still looked back. Pei Ziyun did not care about this and continued forward. In front of him was the entrance of the district. Hello, Mr. Pei. This was a villa district, and the security guard greeted him warmly. It seemed like he had just returned from work. Hello. Pei Ziyun rode for tens of meters, and when he turned a corner, he could see a 2-story villa. There was even a small lawn at the entrance. The only difference was that there was a plum tree growing under the window. Pei Ziyun looked at the plum tree for some time and smiled. He opened the door and said, "I'm back." "Why are you back so early today?" A woman was in the kitchen. She wasn't very tall, about 1.6 meters. She replied naturally. She wasn't very pretty, but there was a sense of calmness and familiarity about her. "After I've settled everything, and solved all the problems, I'm back." Pei Ziyun reached the sofa and opened the fridge. There was a can of cola inside, and he drank it. "Daddy, this is mine." A small head with short hair popped out from the sofa. Pei Ziyun looked at his daughter, who had suddenly appeared. She was petite, and sat cross-legged on the sofa, revealing a pair of delicate feet. She stared at the television screen, and her face was smooth and soft. Pei Ziyun felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He then heard her asking in a righteous tone, "If you drink, what am I going to eat? Did you bring anything to exchange?" "Yes." Pei Ziyun waved his hand, and a piece of oily steamed meat appeared on a large leaf. He then smiled at his daughter. "How is it? It looks pretty good, right?" A fragrant aroma wafted into her nose, and her stomach was already growling. She swallowed her saliva, but still tried to nitpick. "It's just a big piece of meat. You want to make me fat to death, but don't you know that I need to go on a diet?" She then looked at him curiously, as if trying to figure out where he had brought it from. "Is this takeaway?" Pei Ziyun laughed. "This isn't meat, don't worry and eat it." His daughter had a look of disbelief on her face, as she took out some cutlery from the kitchen and placed a piece into her mouth. This was a special product of the Greek Celestial Empire. It looked like meat but was actually a plant. When one ate it for the first time, it was unimaginably amazing. His daughter stared at it with her eyes wide open, and ate a few more mouthfuls. "What is this? Why is it so delicious? It's meaty and fruity, and it's not greasy at all?" his daughter asked, puffing her cheeks. At this point, an orange tabby ran out. It was very fat, and its furry tummy was round. When it smelled the aroma, it started meowing. Pei Ziyun held it down and smiled without replying. "I'm finally home." End of the book. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.